From the very beginning, I knew what type of story I wanted to tell in FOIBLE. There was a concept to make a rough, sketchy protagonist which had some personal problems that wouldn't evolve throughout the story but instead devolve. With the earliest concepts, I sat down, pieced together some sample materials, films to inspire it, rough outlines of what the character would look like. And it was originally called Vertigo, which obviously I knew the film name was taken by Hitchcock, and I had that idea, but in the off chance we could use pre-existing film names, that was the optional one. And it wasn't until the lesson where we were told that we couldn't do that, where I had 40 minutes to decide a new name, and as I was sitting there, I came across foible, which was a unique word. So I looked into the meaning, and it highlighted that the word foible means one flaw in a person's particular character, which at that point, the one flaw in my character that I'd written was that he had a speech impediment, which led to his bullying being the one problem in his way. Because the original film Vertigo, which I would consider the narrative to be different enough to stand as its own compared to foible, it followed a character with a lisp who was studying to be an attorney at law, who got bullied by a number of people who had been there for a while, and his lisp being his one problem led to multiple other problems for him. Could he do this? Could he make it? And the real tragedy was going to be that he couldn't, and he gave in to his more hateful beliefs, his more hateful tendencies, with his bullies who would eventually draw out a snap in him. And this kind of, these were the blueprints for what ended up happening. But these concepts would fold into foible with, the bully staying there, a character who stood as his friend but actually betrayed him in the time that he was gone. So a lot of this did, stay around, but the changes that were made were definitely for the better. But, I really like the name foible for what it stood for, because, as in the final product, you could sit there and go, well, hang on, this protagonist has more than one problem, he has a lot more than just one thing going wrong with him. But for me, his foible, his one problem, is eventually what led to his snap and eventually ruined his life forever. Which, you as an audience member will understand once you've seen it, what that actually is. And, one of the things that I knew from the get-go was that this wasn't going to be a social realism project. It wasn't going to reflect on issues in the world in a way which, had some deeper message or tried to communicate something to audiences on a larger scale. It was just purely for entertainment, which is what I feel I did in the end. And, this ultimately helped the project in a way, not straying too far from reality or seeming too unrealistic, but at the same time standing in its own as a fictional project. Not to say that this wouldn't be possible in real life, but to this extreme, it was, sort of dramified and exaggerated for the sake of, furthering the narrative. Going back to the sample materials, when doing this part of the process, the pre-production phase, these were all so important in, bringing the idea out, because you had the posters, the rough drafts, the written analyses, further looked into the story, rough outlines, a screenplay, which, stayed faithful through to the end, funny enough. And then you had the sample materials, which these had a lot of significance for me, because each of these films or TV shows really had a role in inspiring the project through their use of, the editing, the shot types, the acting, which was a key inspiration from films like Taxi Driver, The King of Comedy, Joker. But, not leaning too far into them projects and, their tropes, their elements to make this film stand out on its own. And that was one of the key points in the pitch, during the early stages, that, a film of this small of a scale in terms of, production value, budget, all of this was, kept at an extremely low price in estimated values and in the final thing. So it wasn't a major risk with this project anyway, giving, more creative freedom and less stress and pressure on the ends of, the higher ups involved in this project, with taking it on. So, that was particularly helpful in bringing this out. And, during this early stage, when piecing together these characters, one of the things that was important to me was how to visually showcase the protagonist in a way which showed his emotions more than just expressing them through the acting. And another important thing to me when making this short film was how to visually showcase the troubles of this character, other than just doing it through the use of acting, the environment around him, the pills on his nightstand, all of that kind of stuff, which I initially jotted down, enveloping into the final thing. And one of the key things to me was the use of wardrobe, because that really showcased the troubles of the character, his mental state, the type of person he is, his confidence, the way he likes to look. And, that's why I leapt towards Mr. Robot as an inspirational source, which is a TV show which follows a similar protagonist, which has, issues to a similar extent. And the protagonist in this TV show just wears a black hoodie and a pair of jeans, and that's all he wears because he doesn't care enough about his appearance. Because he's so secluded and so wrapped away, which really inspired my use of wardrobe in the early drafts. And even earlier on, before the initial shoot, we had images of Alex Roffey, who would go on to play the protagonist, wearing different mock-ups for the character, so we had more variety based on his wardrobe. And overall it really helped. And so after using Mr. Robot as a main inspirational source and thoroughly examining the use of elements visually and aesthetically, this is what really led into the key visual elements of FOIBLE, such as the use of medication, the use of similar clothing from scene to scene, being trapped in the same pair of clothes every day, being trapped in the same locations, this type of thing. It really helped, and it smoothly brought us into the production phase.
Wait, is that not the off button?
No, that's shooting. You need to flip it around. So when you need to make it up there. So, right before the start of the shooting stage, I was still figuring out the roles of these characters. We had about a week to go, and I still hadn't cast the bully's friend and the protagonist's friend. And this was where I looked back at older productions that I'd worked on, such as The Lunchtime Gangsters and just several other tree shot productions. And one of the people that I knew as a fact I wanted in this short film was E1 Chocolate, a renowned actor who'd proven himself in The Lunchtime Gangsters, as I'd mentioned before. He was always going to be attached to this project in some way. I'd asked him if he'd be interested in a role, and he said, yeah, just tell me the role and I'll be there. And it was just a matter of figuring it out, because I had an idea to make him the main bully, but he has, as an actor, he has sort of comedic cues which sort of link into a more... he can still play an aggressive character and, a more nihilistic character, but as the main bully, I didn't quite see him in that role, so I asked him if he wanted to be the bully's friend that would still have a form of conflict with the protagonist, proving that he can do that as well. And, he was set for the role. And in terms of the other role, being the protagonist's friend that had, folded into this group, I opted for Leo Rothwell, who'd, previously acted in other things as well, alongside, E1 Chocolate, which is sort of where they built up their chemistry as actors, alongside each other. So what better way, to place them back together as characters which are part of the same friend group,
Yo, Edward Uda here, part of Tree Shot Productions. I couldn't do an interview with those other guys because I'm on a busy schedule. This is basically the El Roffey's house, you know what I mean? And this is going to be the famous scene where me and Alex Roffey have a good confrontation, you know what I mean? So, yeah, E1 trucks out, Tree Shot on top. Bye-bye. Guys, this is going to be where my scene is, basically. Me and Alex, we're going to go at it. I'm going to bully him. So, yeah, see you guys out.
fake
We have our first on-set injury. Show us your finger.
I've got a paper cut when I threw Harry's driving licence papers.
Provisional, you know.
Yeah.
You know, risk assessment, it's important.
Yeah. Maybe next time we should bring some like a first aid kit or something.
Exactly, he could bleed out, you know, he could have that. Yeah.
Alright.
Going right into the shooting stage, one of the things that I knew was how tough this was going to be, because I had set out to film the entirety of my short film, which was going to be far longer than initially planned, and ultimately there were a lot of sacrifices that we would have to make in order to, you know, achieve this in such a quick manner. Because, I mean, on the first day of shooting, you know, we shot large portions of it in one location. And, you know, after shooting this, I realised that I couldn't just do this in some linear order. I really had to, you know, pin down each location, each scene, and, you know, make a timetable based off of, the convenience of one shoot to the next day, you know. So we would have days where we would shoot all in one location from scenes across the entirety of the film, and I would try and narrow those down and get those locations out of the way. We'd then do like the one-off locations, such as, you know, when we went to Waitrose, the introduction scene at night, the closing scene, which was in an alleyway, which wasn't the only time we filmed in there, that was multiple days. But generally speaking, you know, we had a lot to do in a short amount of time, being about 3 to 4 weeks before we had a 1 week break, and after which we had to hand this in. So really this was a tough shoot, but everyone, you know, there was, you know, down to meet and do this on separate occasions. So really the cast and crew massively helped out in bringing this together. I mean, one of the toughest shoots, I believe, was the day when we went into school and then we had to come home. I mean, our timetable ended after the first lesson, so we came home back to mine. We filmed a number of scenes inside of the house, and then after that we met up later in the day to film at night to do the scene, the introduction scene, which was at night, where he was out delivering pizzas for his job in the role. And this was where, you know, and in this day alone that we filmed about 5 to 10 minutes of screen time, and it really was a tough process in which, you know, we were able to, you know, pull this together. And one of the things which I believe could have, you know, damaged the project at first was how we was filming it, you know, in a non-linear order. I mean, obviously being the way done in the industry, but with far less time and far less resources, I wondered if whether we put this together, it would almost seem disjointed, with, you know, the earlier scenes being filmed towards the end. And, you know, this non-linear order, could it disrupt the project? Could it make it seem almost unnatural and bizarre? But overall, you know, I was able to tell the actors what happened to them prior to this and how they got here. And ultimately, you know, they put in just as much work, you know, making this seem so organic and so pieced together. So overall, the filming schedule, whilst rough, you know, it really did come together, you know, in such a great way. And, you know, and despite all of the time constraints, everyone, you know, they really put in all they had into their roles and into their characters, and I couldn't be more thankful for the help they provided in doing this. As far as reshoots went, there wasn't really a lot to do because of how I wrote down scene to scene, what we had to do, where we had to go. But once we had filmed all of it and I'd done most of it, I realised that, you know, having looked back at the footage, I realised actually, yeah, there's a shot here which I'm missing, or there's a shot there. So, I mean, one particular day we, between a study lesson and our following lesson, we rushed back to my place and we quickly filmed one shot which included a dolly zoom, which, whilst experimental and while seeming a bit rough, having it been my first time, I do think bettered the reveal scene, because you can really see the terror in his face in such a, you know, visually unique way. So, I mean, this kind of thing was, you know, I mean, it was a swift thing which was able to, you know, get out of the way quickly, with everything else going on, you know, doing other people's short films, helping with that. And overall, you know, the reshoot stage was, you know, done with ease. Having made it that far and having gone through all the other shooting, you know, we were ready for it and we were able to quickly do it.
This character, I feel like everyone can sort of resonate with people like this to a certain extent, because really it's a character that just wants to be loved, you know. He has that desire just like anyone else, and someone who playing a character who is so deprived of those essential things, it's very easy.
So being able to go to Leo's house was exquisite.
Mum, wait!
We're behind the scenes of Jamie dying. We just said
Oh, I
that.
can't wait for him to die. Got the rod.
Behind the
You did it
scenes
to the
with
camera.
the modern Marlon Brando.
Right, yeah.
A1 off dog. Domino's employee.
Alright, come on.
Behind the scenes in that, this is E1 Chocolate, live and flesh and a bone. Mr. Archer, you're the best teacher in the world.
It's nice. Right, that's a wrap. That's a cut.
That's a wrap, dear. Let's
Okay,
cut.
boys. After I finished the production phase, I'd taken a several day break to get myself ready for this part, which was going to be extremely lengthy. I knew that there was 2 weeks left to finish this entire project before we had to hand it in, and this was where I really had to, race the clock. I had 2 weeks and I had to edit a 30-minute short film, so this was going to be tough. This editing phase was particularly important to me because this was where I would really bring things into full fruition. I was able to, look back at scenes and, finally take ideas that I had in my mind of, the musical cues, the shot changes, and piece it all together in a way which, finally took it off of the page and it onto the screen, I mean, looking back at the script which I mentioned all the way back in the pre-production phase, there was a particular part in this script which involved an opening sequence which would, show a character out delivering pizzas on his job after school, a slow opening, with little to no sound heard, with a character just sort of breathing in and out, just, a relieving way before he goes out to do another thing in his stressful life. And it would, follow a musical cue being Empire Ants by Gorillaz, which took a large amount of inspiration from the opening sequence to the film Drive, which was one of my sample materials. This was sort of a techno aesthetic, a techno theme, which also fitted into a more depressing and more, dark tone film. So it was really sort of a hybrid mix, which this film wasn't entirely going to be, but at the same time I wanted to sort of give it a thrilling and, upbeat opening to sort of, start with a high and sort of slowly decline as the character declines in sort of, the type of music being, more score-themed music, being more and more depressing, leading into the closing parts of the film, which actually, sort of contradicts this with a more upbeat, a more happy-sounding music, which, factored into the closing montage sequence, because my initial idea was to have a sequence which, stylistically showed the protagonist walking the same path that he walks in the introduction, but this time he goes the opposite way, and as he walks the opposite way, upbeat music plays as, the keybones or black bars were sort of eased away and stripped back, making the screen more free and more open, as the character feels more free and open as he goes to kill someone. So it's really a twisted, and it's a way of portraying how far he's come and how far he's fallen as a character, And, this type of way of, showcasing the ending, something so horrible as a murder done by a protagonist that, the audience would have had such high hopes for, making it past this. This was something that I wanted to do because as, the film goes on and, he falls further and further, I wanted to, showcase how his perception of what was right and what was wrong had slipped so far, with something as, something this sinister being this upbeat and this, sounding this kind and this, it really was just a strange contrast of imagery combined with, his worst of moments, which, he can tell the difference of, in the past and the present. But in that moment, nothing mattered, and these visual elements paid into, the amazing acting of Alex, who really came into his own, showing the pure hatred in his face as he walks towards him, pulling out his weapon and killing his bully. It really was, it really was a great closing sequence, I feel. And one of the things which I didn't really plan on doing until I got closer to it was, jump cutting between the past and the present. As this happened, it would show the protagonist walking through, the alleyway as the music plays, in the flashback sequence. But then as I was getting closer to this and as I was filming, I was like, I sort of had the concept of, combining his reaction in the present of him raging, him upset, him crying, him being so distraught, realising what he's done, mixed in with just a version of him from a few days prior where he just does not care. And, since then he's chosen to block it out of his mind, showing how dangerous he's become. And, as I cut between the two, I kept, the visual elements of the way the film had been the whole time, with the present, maintaining the cinematic black bars, in the way it had. And, as it cuts to the past, it keeps the black bars, but only barely, as it's so much more peeled back and he feels so much more free and so much more open, despite him actually having lost control and becoming completely and utterly insane. So this closing sequence was particularly important as me, just as much as the opening was, as it portrayed these, these key moments in starting and closing the narrative in a stylistic and, tone-setting way, which is, what I'd set out to do here. Building on the use of music, I really wanted to score this film in a way which was done organically, to the point where it didn't seem so out of place and so bold, and such a seamless jump between, the music used in the beginning being, a Gorillaz song, which also had some, some undertones to it, to a dark and, gritty theme. So, doing so in that kind of manner was extremely important to me, to make it seem organic and flow really well. And, the music I ended up using as a score was actually the Mr. Robot music, the inspirational source that I'd mentioned earlier, done by Matt Quayle, which, was a more techno and more, it's a techno but gritty, like hybrid, which sort of built into a great form of scoring for Mr. Robot, which also worked great here. And it was absolutely great to be able to use that music, which I was I knew could fit in with the shots, the story, the characters, and overall start with sort of a more techno, slightly gritty theme, and sort of build into a more gritty and the techno's fading out, from these multiple albums that the artists have put out, featuring these scores from the various soundtracks to different seasons. So it really was a helpful part of the process, the use of music. And after finishing the final edit and sort of sending it off, I had a few days to ponder on it and sort of look over it. And as I did this, I would notice a few issues here and there, such as the use of black bars in the closing sequence, how I hadn't actually changed it, because as I'd mentioned before, I sort of cut between a more peeled back set of black bars and a more closed version which was used in the present. But in the initial shoot, I had actually just kept them there in both of them. So to be able to make this change was extremely important to me, as it sort of differentiated the past and the present. And I was also able to make smaller changes, such as, whether the background sound being too loud or the character's dialogue being a little off, in my opinion. So this really helped me out. And as I had sent it off, I still had 3 days to the actual deadline. And I decided to go back and use these few more days to be able to make these changes and send off a final cut, which I felt was particularly complete in my eyes, which I'm more than happy that I did, because it really helped me finish off this project in a way which felt natural and complete to me. And just like the production process, there was a few misconceptions whether I'd make it to the end and meet the deadline, and fortunately I was able to here, based on the large amount of time and effort put into it. So I couldn't be more satisfied with how it all turned out in the end. As of recording this, it's been 3 months since the short film has been finished, in which time the actors and everyone else involved in the short film have gone on to star, direct and produce in other projects, from Tree Shot and just other studios in general. Overall, to me, this short film was generally important as it was my first leap into a longer form of filmmaking with, a 30-minute short film as opposed to, 5-minute ones and several minute ones that I'd previously worked on before. And it sort of gave me an idea of the lengths and, the sort of more practical elements behind making something of this length and, depth. And having done so in such a short amount of time, it sort of gives me hope for, what could be done, down the line. And I mean, overall, having looked back on the general process throughout making this behind-the-scenes video, I can definitely say that, the pure experience of making this short film was extremely educational and fun. Mate, having put this role behind you, what was this role to you in retrospective? Is it just a paycheck, or are you really passionate about the artistic freedom given him?
I mean, as I said, I'm a massive fan of Harry's work. I think he's a director that I've idolised for some years now. Never worked with any director quite like him, so being a part of any project that he makes is an honour. Definitely not about the money, although the paycheck I received can't be ignored. It did supplement a lot of my lifestyle that I have now. But no, I'm always there for the art.
Thank you for being with us. Yeah, thank you for being here with us today. It's an absolute honour to meet you, sir. A huge fan of your work.
Pleasure.
Hi, sorry, is this Leo? Are you Leo from Leo? Leo Rockwell?
Do I know you?
Were you on the set of FOIBLE? Sorry, I'm mixing you up with someone else.
So Leo's acting was stellar, absolutely fantastic.
Life changed for me completely. I've become the actor that I wanted to become. I just want to say a big shout out to Harry Lazarus and Mr. Archer for making this film happening. Because if it wasn't for those two, my acting career would never happen. It's just cool now looking back on like the past example of me blowing up and actually becoming famous was the first Lunchtime Gangsters. Hopefully the second one could come out. I can't say too much about it, but yeah, thank you for having me.
After a long shooting process, it took us start of May, that's when we started this. It's June 12th, I think. We finished.
Finally.
We have Biggin Hill, the town which made us do this.
The length we go to.
We have some nice lighting. We have the city of London over there.
Come on.
Slightly seen. Yeah. It was tough. We had some hurdles here and there.
We did.
But if it's for the culture, it's for the culture.
3 days filming at 10:30 at night, trying to just get this one shot.
Yeah, honestly, respectable. Yeah.